Welcome to the UCLA Anderson Drive Time Podcast. My name is Dylan Stafford. I am an assistant dean here at UCLA Anderson. I am the host of this podcast. Today, I have a really exciting guest. Of course, I think all my guests are wonderful, and today is no exception. We are joined by Tori Brodsky, who is a member of the one and only class of 2023, the biggest class ever to walk the halls of UCLA Anderson in any program. The class that started during a pandemic. Tori is an entrepreneur. She is a CEO and founder of a company that she's created called DrinkLyte, and we're going to hear about that journey. That's happened during FEMBA. She's 18 months, halfway into the program. In my opinion, she is a force in motion. In other people's opinion, she's very highly regarded. She was featured in our Anderson Accelerator showcase last year, one of the featured companies asked to present. She was the recipient of the Wolfen Entrepreneurial Spirit Award last year. The Los Angeles Business Journal named her to their 20 in their 20s list of top entrepreneurs here in Los Angeles. And just for those of you who forget, because it's easy to forget, but there are 10 to 11 million people in Los Angeles. We're actually the 10th or 11th largest state in the nation. So that's quite an achievement. Way back at orientation, which must seem like a lifetime ago to you, Tori, back at orientation at Leadership Foundations, her peers nominated her to be part of our Voice of FEMBA pilot. So Tori has been generously sharing reflections of her FEMBA journey at mile posts along the way, and you can find those on our website. And all of this while she still juggles clients. She still has a day job, which is even also very interesting. She does temporary project management, offering COO, CMO services to other startups. So mentorship is big in her world. So all of that plus school, plus founding and CEOing DrinkLyte. So Tori, welcome.
Dylan, thank you. Wow. I don't know how I'm going to follow all of that up. That was an amazing introduction. I should carry you around with me wherever I go.
That's right. Dylan in a box. Yeah. Just put me up on the podium. Well,
I think in my last LinkedIn post, I actually called you the FEMBA cheerleader.
Woohoo. Yeah. Give me a pom-pom. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know, the second George Bush was a cheerleader at Yale, right? Like for those of us who don't have the ability to be an athlete, you know, there's always be a cheerleader. Cheerleaders
are important. I've required a lot of cheerleaders in my life. I'll say that.
Well, yes, I love it. I love it. And let's make sure we mention some of those. Where are you right now, physically broadcasting from?
Physically, I am in the basement of Cornell Hall. It is the accelerator space, and it's a big room for pitch decks. So hopefully I'm not echoing too much. But it's usually quiet down here on Fridays, which is when I will come in. And I was fortunate enough to be in the accelerator in the spring of 2021 cohort during my first year as a FEMBA, but we were still remote then. So at that time, you know, we were mostly online, but I kind of still trickle in, and I have my stuff here and I use the desk, and it's like, once you're in, you're kind of in.
Well, and I remember last year when you were emailing me, like, how do I get a key? And I was like, I have no idea who's up there, because it was right at the end, you know, before, when we were trying to figure out, yes, we're coming back, but when are we coming back? And what are the protocols? What are the etiquettes? And you were just like, can we skip all that, please? I just want to make some stuff happen.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved your patience and I loved your proactivity. And I saw your LinkedIn post this morning about this episode right now. Oh, people keep coming in. Perfect. And I loved your title. The UCLA FEMBA life is messy, y'all. And what I would love to do is give people a sense of your story, which is so, I mean, you've had a busy 2 years, before FEMBA, even the fact that you didn't even really have FEMBA on your radar till you saw a last minute LinkedIn from us. And here you are, really maybe 2 years and 2 months from that moment. You've created an entirely different life. You've taken advantage of so many of the resources of Anderson. And as we talked in our preparation, you know, Anderson is wonderful because it's an entrepreneurially minded place. There are 100 interesting faculty doing 100 very different things. So that's an asset. But the other side of that coin is the challenge of there's no one recipe to be an Anderson student. And especially when you start to dance in the world of entrepreneurship, there's a amount of grit and perseverance and hustle and stick-to-itiveness and determination, all of which I think you embody in spades. So, kind of maybe walk us through, if you would, how this journey has evolved and get us all the way up to maybe where you are now as you're reflecting on what all is happening.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And I think the lights went out. So that goes to show nobody's really in here, but I think the lighting looks okay.
It looks great.
I wish Rod Kurtz, my PR mentor, so to say, media mentor, was here to tell me, but I think we're all good. So yeah, I mean, like you said, look, Anderson was always on my radar.
Okay.
I grew up in a really small, very like rural town in Northern California called Orangevale. And luckily I went to a very, very good K-8 school that was super, super hands-on. And the learning at that school was very much like student-led. Like you called your teachers by your first name. There was always like a leader in the groups, and there was a lot of like student-led teaching.
Nice.
And so I think like early on, there was just such a huge focus on leadership in my life. And I was really lucky to like get handed opportunities by, so to say, the cheerleaders throughout my life, who thought, or who kind of just saw more potential in me than I did in myself at the time. I'll never forget that, like, and I tell this story all the time, and I wonder if he's actually ever seen it, but my yearbook advisor in high school, Mr. Austin, the yearbook program is like it's like renowned. It's very competitive. It's invite only. They compete on an international scale. And so, yeah, it's very intense. It was like the only thing that was actually very cool about our school. I'll say that. But I was like, I don't know if I'll get into that. Well, he invited me. I got an invitation, but that was like when I was a freshman, and I basically had to choose yearbook or student council, like, if I wanted to become class president one day or something like that. And this was kind of more the popular choice. And I was like, ooh, I think this is kind of the time where like people determine, like either you're going to be popular or not. So I'm going to go with the popular one. And these kids were sweet kids, but just not the kids that I should have been surrounded with. And I remember I was on literally like the concrete, floor, like in school, and I'm like drawing with like paint, like a homecoming sign. And Mr. Austin comes over to me and he like puts his hands on his hips. He's like, so you're telling me that you are going to spend the rest of your 3 years here sitting on the floor painting signs instead of joining my yearbook program and becoming editor-in-chief your senior year. And by the way, editor-in-chief was like, it was like the only 1 or 2 people who would go off to like an Ivy League school from my high school. So it was like, what are you talking about? Are you insane? And so the fact that he said that made me want to like cry and choke and I don't know what else. Like at the same time, I was very overwhelmed, but I couldn't say no after that. So that was, and yes, I did become editor-in-chief. And yes, we won a number of Columbia Scholastic Press and National Scholastic Press Awards for that year. So very proud of that experience. But all that to say is like, I was one of those people growing up where I was pretty good at some stuff. Like I got good grades. I found out later I had dyslexia, but so like school was always very hard for me. But my older brother very much encouraged me to really work hard to get straight A's. So that was hard for me, but I did it. And I did these opportunities that people threw at me, but I never really knew like the direction I wanted to go with my life. Like some of my friends were like, I'm going to stay here and have kids. I'm going to go off to college and do this. I had really no idea. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to do what my older brother Miles told me to do, which is do really well in school. And he was like, lead, you're good at leading. And I was like, lead what? He's like, anything you can. And I was like, okay. And so I became like president of the National Honor Society, editor-in-chief of the yearbook. I was captain of the volleyball team and a bunch of other, club stuff that I did during that time. So I was very involved, but it was kind of like I was mediocre at everything else. Like I was like, okay at math. I was pretty good at writing. That was the only thing I was kind of pretty good at. But all this to say is like, I never felt like I had a path. And then I got to college and I went to UC Berkeley. And at Berkeley, I also didn't have a path. I was like, okay, I got here. What's next? Because I think when you grow up in kind of the humble, I'll say, setting that I grew up in, like I was raised by a single mom, 4 kids. It was very tough for us. It's really hard to think long-term. And so when I got to college, it was like, I don't know what my life looks like beyond this. And I think that I wasn't totally alone. I think that there's a lot of other, college age kids who kind of get that feeling. And so I had actually, joined my major very late. I decided to study nutritional sciences because I had struggled with an eating disorder all of my life. And it got to the point where my advisor was like, you have to choose a major. You can't just take all these classes. And I was like, well, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And she's like, what do you feel passionate about? What do you want to learn about? I was like, I'm so sick of this relationship with food. I want to learn about food. Like I want to actually learn about nutrition, not just the things that are on the shelf. And this is all relevant to Anderson, I promise. But
no, I love it. I love it. Yeah. And excuse me, I'm just going to pause you for 1 second. I got goosebumps about Mr. Austin.
I know, Dan.
Like you're a freshman.
Yeah.
And he sees that type potential, and there's like one pathway, quote unquote, to, elite Ivy League, 4 league, kind of out. Cause I grew up in Denison, Texas, 21,000 people, one high school, most people went to Grayson County College and got like 2-year associate's degrees, and that was sufficient. Right. So I just get the value. And then your brother Miles saying, lead what? I don't care. Just lead.
like anything.
So, and then you take, I got a bucket full of random units that turn this into a degree. But so all 3 of those examples, though, they were asking you or pointing you or guiding you, and you were willing to listen.
Right. So I think that I've had this theme throughout my life where like, I know that I can do hard things, but I do need that whole village and that whole community to kind of like tell me where to put that energy has been so important for me.
Yeah.
So going on to kind of like my career, I actually got my first job as I was waiting tables, and then I was hired for my first job while I was waiting tables. This was while I was at Berkeley, and I got hired as an intern at this tech company in LA that was doing some nutrition stuff. So I started working in startups immediately, and I really enjoyed it. But what I did not enjoy was the anxiety of having a boss. I've apparently lived with anxiety all my life. I didn't realize, but then when I have a boss, it just went to like the roof because I had all these opportunities to lead in my life. And now it's like, yeah, when I work like minimum wage jobs, yeah, you have a boss, but they're your friends and it doesn't really matter. But now you're like, oh my gosh, if this person doesn't like, if I do something wrong, they might fire me and then I can't pay rent. And at this point in time, I had actually dropped out of Berkeley to start working for this company.
Oh, really?
I had dropped out of Berkeley, and I had brought one of my very, very smart business economic major friends, because this startup asked me to do things that I had like no experience in, none whatsoever. And I was like, I need to bring the smartest person I know in business to come help me.
Come with me. We're going to LA.
Exactly. And so I'm like, like all this anxiety of like, I dropped out of school. I convinced a friend to drop out of school. Like there was so much
they
anxiety.
did also?
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
By the way, this is now my business partner of 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So we kind of had the same sentiment. Like we were both very entrepreneurial. And I said, one day I think I want to go to business school. So I think I want to go back to Berkeley. We said, well, let's just give some time to network in LA. So while we convinced that company that we were going to work remotely, we started networking in Orange County in LA, primarily just pitching ideas, like startup ideas that I thought would be cool to share with other people. And then like literally in my first pitch, I got hired as like basically a co-founder. Like someone was like, hey, I have this company. It was an older gentleman. He was an EIR at UCI. And was like, I have a couple companies. I've been looking for like some young, energetic people to help me run them. Do you want to do it? And do you have people to do it? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So that kicked off a career in what we call project management in startups, which was essentially doing anything and everything that was required by us for other companies. And like, these were all across the board. So if you look at like kind of my LinkedIn, like you'll see like so many different industries. So anyways, that's kind of a little bit about my career, but going back to this theme of kind of like letting my surroundings mold me, at some point, like, I think it was 2020, I had already like kicked off DrinkLyte.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really exciting because we had actually done, this was like my fourth startup, actually. Like, wow. I'd built a wedding registry app. I built a new bra company with a patented design. I built a cosmetic case, also patent pending design, like all these things. But it got to a point where like I needed a MVP and I didn't have the money and I couldn't convince anybody to just give me the money. I was like, hey, like I have this idea. Raising money is really hard. So DrinkLyte was something where the idea fit, it could fit our budget to get a can. Like we could actually get the project, or we could actually get an MVP with, you know, like our savings and earnings. And so I'm like, okay, let's do this. So anyways.
So self-funding. So this is attempt number 4 and you're going to self-fund.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You have a high tolerance for risk.
Yes, I do.
I mean, just, it may not seem like that to you, but compared to, you know, how many people spent their 20s.
Well, I think it goes
your 20s in a different manner.
And I think it goes back to the expectation, Dylan, of like, I didn't know what my life was going to look like. Okay. I had no idea. And that was kind of like a happy accident of just not like thinking long term. But it taught me a lot of good lessons because like, I didn't know that that's how people people go off and then they get a job after, and then they stick with that job and then they climb the job. Like that just didn't make sense for me. So that's why I kind of have this wonky, like alternative career. And
you don't like bosses, and bosses give me anxiety. So, you know, it's pick your poison at some level, right? There's different kinds of stresses in life. You get to choose the stress that you are going to deal with. Exactly.
So, with all that being said, like the day that we got, I mean, like in May 2019, we had the idea for DrinkLyte. In August, we had product.
Okay. And so tell them, you know, like, I think of this as like hangover medicine for grownups, but how do you describe it?
DrinkLyte is literally the best instant hydration that you can get on the market.
And who might need instant hydration? When do humans need instant hydration?
So people need it when they drink. And that has been the market that we've gone after because no one had gone after that market. So we launched with not really launched, like I literally just got the product and I walked into a bar and it was like, I think you should hydrate your patrons. And I have this thing and it looks like I actually don't have any with me. I think there's some back in the accelerator, but like our original cans, like I was like, look, it looks like a White Claw. Like no one will know that this person is getting like instant, really powerful hydration that's going to make them feel better. And it's just healthier for them. Like it's a healthy habit. And so that's how we kicked things off. And honestly, like that day, like we got into our first bar, which I was not expecting. And when I was kind of like talking to beverage experts as we were developing, you know, our MVP of the product, they were like, look, like on premise is really hard to break into. Drunk people don't care about hydration. And like all of those things we proved wrong over a series of like, I mean, I think we did over, you know, 50, 60, even maybe more. I don't know how many events we went to, but we went to events and served this product to people who were drinking a number of times. And every time it was like the can was empty or near empty. And so, you know, that basically just proved like, okay, this is something to do. And then when March came around 2020, because by that time, like we had gotten all these accounts and we were really excited. And I was like, okay, we're going to have to like start getting some money. We're going to have to order new products. So I'm literally like, I have my inventory order in for another, like, I don't know how many cases, but it was a lot because I was preparing for all these purchase orders. And thank God I didn't, because it was like that day I was heading to Vegas to see if I could go get more accounts there. Shelter in place happened.
Wow. The world turned upside down. You're about to like put some money down on your inventory.
Yeah. And it was like time 4 of like trying to do this thing on my own, like start a business. And it's just like, what the heck? In a pandemic? Come on.
A once in 100-year phenomenon that affects all 7 continents. Gee.
Exactly. So that, I mean, 2020 really brought forth, and keep in mind, I'm still working full time. We have clients. And so 2020 really brought forth kind of like I think for a lot of people, just a lot of like the problems that we were dealing with. And I noticed like I still did have so many insecurities about my work, because at that point in time, we were like talking about pivoting, and, you know, I was trying not to get discouraged and that sort of thing. And that's when like Anderson had always been on my mind. It had always been, and I'll go back to why and who played a part in that. But I saw it on LinkedIn and I was like, maybe now. Because it was always like when, and it was like when I have money to pay for it, you know, like when I have a business where I can like go get, you know, maybe like employees or co-founders or something like that. So it was like, well, maybe a pandemic is a good time.
Wow.
So I was one of the like late applicants, and I actually didn't tell anybody. I told no one, because I mean, I still struggle with self-esteem issues. And so I really didn't want to like disappoint anyone. And that'll also come, you know, full circle in all of this. But with Anderson, like my brother's ex-girlfriend, they both went to Berkeley. Like she had gone to Anderson, and she was down in LA at Anderson at my time when I was down in LA. And like at that point in time, by the way, I dropped out a couple of times at Berkeley. This is the first time. It's confusing, but this was the time before I got my first job. And I was actually just like catching up on courses at a bunch of community colleges in LA. And I was waiting tables. And a couple of events were Anderson events that I waited on.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. And she was in that class. She was in that full-time class. So I would see her, you know, and it was really fun. And I, like, business school was never on my radar, but it was like, well, she's somebody that I look up to. Like, oh, there's a bunch of other smart women here at this table. Oh, they're leading this thing. Oh, these people are really nice too. It's like, they look like nice, you know, rich people wearing nice clothes and spending a lot of money on this food in this restaurant. Maybe I can do this, like, you know. And so that was, she was like a big influence on me for that. And so when I applied, she was the first person I called when I got in. And I was like, Deb, I'm going to Anderson. And I applied for the fully employed program just because I was like, well, there's no way I can take full-time classes right now. I've got clients, I've got DrinkLyte still, all this stuff going on. So the FEMBA program just worked out. And now I'm halfway through.
And now you're halfway through. Yeah, I have to tell Raymond, because he runs all our marketing and communications. So
yeah.
And your class, I said it earlier, but to say it again, you know, the class of 2023, I think you're the largest, I know you're the largest FEMBA class to ever walk the halls of the 34, 35 years of FEMBA. I think you're the largest Anderson class that's ever walked the halls. And we over admitted, but you also over accepted. I mean, none of us knew what was going on that pandemic year. So we thought, well, maybe people are going to not want to come. So, you know, we gave a few more yeses and we stayed open a little longer. And then there were 377 of you all. And it's really been a journey, because it's a lot of human beings. And you guys are the, you know, the courageous class, because you started in August of 2020. You had a 100% virtual leadership foundation experience, right? You know, your entire class has been a live and learn by doing phenomenon for all of us. None of us, you know, it's, you guys have taught us as much as, you know, the faculty have taught you. Just, and I do think that the future will be based off, you know, trying to keep what, there were things that were better. And we want to keep those going forward while we try to bring back all the historical strengths that in-person, face-to-face, is all about. So.
Yeah. And you know what? It's actually good that you mentioned that, because I look back and I think, thank God I started this in a pandemic, because there were all of a sudden a lot of programs that were like, it's not like they were closed to FEMBAs, but they were more available to FEMBAs, if that makes sense. Because, for example, like ELDP, the Entrepreneurship Leadership Development Program, like was really hard for FEMBAs to get into because it was a daytime thing. And same with the accelerator, like you have to block out days during the week, like while you would be working theoretically. But because of the pandemic and people working from home, I think there was a little bit more flexibility at, like people's jobs. And so, there was just a little bit more, it was a little bit more normal for FEMBAs to do the things in the past they just hadn't had the time to do.
Well, and your life is fascinating, and you're going to get good at telling it, because you're going to tell it for many, many years, because you're big on mentorship and you're going to inspire so many people. So I love it that we spent an hour, half an hour, just because, it helps, right? Like Orangeville. Okay. I've got a mom, she's really working hard. She has 4 kids. Like people can start to get like, okay.
Yeah.
So that there's the unique Tori part, and, God made one Tori, that's you. Fine. Okay. But there's also all these resources at Anderson. So I'd love sorry to kind of squeeze it, because I'd love to, maybe in 10 minutes or so, we can, take some questions. But I think one of the things I was thinking about, reflecting on, gosh, if I could help Tori help the most number of people, I think that it is difficult to grok everything and to find a pathway for oneself if you want entrepreneurship just in general. But even then, once you know you want it in specific, and then you want to maximize it at Anderson. So maybe like, what did you do first? Who were you listening to? If you knew then what you know now, like kind of walk us through, because you've had a very busy year and a half.
Right.
How did that go?
So that's a great question. And I came into Anderson at a time where I was about to kind of like relaunch like this pivot that I was doing for DrinkLyte, which was a powdered version. And we had an e-commerce website and all this stuff. And I needed help. Like, I was like, I've never done this before. And so in my research and in a couple of conversations I had with people like in orientation, it was like, oh, all the entrepreneur stuff starts in the spring. So like you'll apply in the winter. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I can't wait. Like, I need help now. I can't wait 6 months. And so I think that I literally like set up a call right away with as many people as I could. I set up a call with Trish. I set up a call with Elaine. I may have even set up a call with Angela.
Okay, wait, let me just pause for a second. So Trish Halamandaris is the director of the accelerator. Elaine Hagan is an icon at Anderson. She's former Dean Osborne's right-hand person for decades. She's known by basically every alum ever. Right. And she's, the person, he created the Price Center, but she's the person who makes the Price Center really sing. And you're just tossing around these folks like first name basis. Like, I love your gumption. These are important people, but they want to be a resource. But how did you know to call them? Like, I just love this, because what I would love people to take away from this is, yes, Tori's a very special human being, but also Tori is a citizen of this community who was proactive, professional, respectful. Like, Anderson responds well to professional communication, proactivity. Like, so you just looked him up on the website? How'd you?
I think I literally did. Yeah. I think I did. And I think that, luckily, like, even actually prior to my, right before the pandemic, I had run into a couple of, I think it was Evan Quinn, who's the founder of HIO, which won the NAP competition, I think 2019. NAP competition, by the way, for anybody who's wondering, is like the big business plan competition that we have. And I think it's a $50,000 prize. And anyways, I had a conversation with him, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to Anderson, blah, 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 I'm graduating. And I was like, whoa, and you have your beverage company? He's like, yeah, I built it at Anderson. I was like, whoa, you can do that? So like, just even knowing what could be done was really cool. because I saw it as I was building my business. Same with Elenita, which also came out of Anderson. And so when I came in, I knew of the Price Center. So I think I literally just went to the Price Center's website, saw who was in charge, saw the faces, and I emailed them. Obviously, like being, you have to be respectful of these very important people's times. But I was very like, I pressed that, hey, look, now that I'm a part of this community, and when I get into a community, then I'm like, okay, you guys are going to see a lot of me. So get used to it. But I basically just said, hey, look, I need to talk to someone. I need to tell them what my situation is so that you can tell me what resources are available.
Beautiful.
So
yeah,
among all of them, like there was a few different things, like right away. Startup UCLA is also like an undergrad type of accelerator. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember if I found that through talking to Trish or Elaine or somebody, but I used that as a resource to see if there was any undergraduates who wanted to intern with me. Mm-hmm. And so I had, like, by the end of last year and still do have like 8 interns who have gone through DrinkLyte, and we do like a mentorship program, most of which of them are women. And they're, getting school credit somehow for their major for this, and which is really cool. So that was like a first resource, like I tried to take advantage of immediately. And then it was like, okay, then prep for the fall, which is like, the NAP competition, accelerator, you have to apply to all these things. And so I, prepared myself to apply to all these things. But I think what's more important, Dylan, is that I think the misconception of business school, and I can only speak for Anderson, but I'm sure any business school and any school that you go to, frankly, you're gonna you have to get in there and work. Like that's like, you don't.
What? We don't wave a magic wand and poof, you're Steve Jobs or Oprah Winfrey.
It is like, that's when the hard work starts, and I think that the misconception is like, okay, like these people are here to take care of me. Yes, they are, but you've got to tell them how you need to be taken care of, and if you don't know how, tell them you don't know how, but you want to figure it out. So I think that's like the number one thing is just like, look, everybody here, their job is to help you, but they're not going to know, like Dylan said, like our class is huge. It's like almost 300 people, I think.
No, 377, almost 400.
Oh my, okay. It's almost 400 people.
I don't know if you've ever seen them all in one room because we had to do everything virtual. It's like, sure, you guys would almost fill up Corn Convocation Hall. It's an incredible number of human beings.
That's amazing. Well, there's no way that like the whole staff and the faculty could go and chase after everyone and keep track of everyone. Even with the smaller classes, especially the entrepreneurial like students who want to go into that, like you really have to act like an entrepreneur. Like you have to go out and seek those resources because these people, yeah, they're available to you, but you got to go fetch them, Yeah. So I think that was like really important. And luckily, I was really blessed to like be accepted into the accelerator, to, do some things with the Price Center and do the showcase and all that stuff. So, it worked out for me, and I'm not saying it's going to like be the same path for everybody, but that was my experience. And I think regardless of where you're at in your Anderson journey, like even if you're an alum, like these resources are still fabulous. You just have to seek them out.
Well, and I want to pause for my questions for a second to see if we have any from anyone who's listening right now. And then I want to circle back to, you're in this other phase now of reflection. Like all of a sudden you have resources, you have awareness, you have people pulling for you, and then you have a lot of people trying to jump into your executive circle. And I want to come back to that, but let me just pause for a second. Anybody who's listening who would like to ask Tori a question, we'd love to hear. Big or small, no bad questions. This is just like class. If you want to raise your hand or. Okay. All right. Everybody's listening and learning. Well, so another thing in our preparation, you said like, it's not all butterflies and roses. And in fact, right now I'm at this chapter where, what did you say? You said since the showcase in October, I've learned more since then than in the prior 5 years together.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's a fire hose, and you're having to digest that. So, kind of tell people like, and then, choosing your team for your capstone, kind of tell people like the right now. Cause what I love about Drive Time is you're going to be a star someday. You're already a star in my opinion, because you're demonstrating perseverance, grit, gumption, and you're doing all the right stuff. So you're on your fourth startup. So most successful entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs. So I have zero doubt that 20 years from now you will have a nonprofit and you'll be running the world and it'll be amazing. But what I love about Drive Time is that we can kind of like, you're just in it right now. All that's coming. You're creating that future, and but like right now it's like real, do I do this or do that? So, how is it going here halfway through FEMBA, but
Life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I said the other day, like, yeah, since showcase, which was last October, all of a sudden it was like, I had an influx of people interested in the business, which is fabulous, obviously. But I had been on such a, like a fast roller coaster with the business and learning things and ups and downs and going through the accelerator and then, like doing a bunch of different stuff that I didn't really like sit back and think about the long term as much as I probably should have. It was just kind of like, I need to just get through each day, especially as a FEMBA, because as a FEMBA, remember, you're doing your day job, and then at night or on the weekends, you're taking classes. And when you're not in a class, you're having meetings with your team online or in person or wherever, or you're reading your cases, you're preparing for class. So it's a lot. And so come like this year, I mean, the winter quarter for me was just like a ton of work. Like it was overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And so the start of this quarter, I slowed down and I basically was like, look, I really need to think about what the rest of my future at Anderson looks like, right? So choosing like my capstone and being really intentional with that. What does the future of my company look like? Who do I want to bring in? What type of, what type of company do I want this to actually be? And what decisions are going to affect that, And so all of a sudden, it was like this year in the middle of my FEMBA journey, it started kicking in how to think long-term. But in order to do that, I had to chill. And for anybody who knows me, that's like really hard for me to do. And it honestly took a little bit of like, like depression for that to actually like reveal itself and to be like, hey, like my mind is telling me something. And I'm glad it did, because going back to like the resources at Anderson, like just being back in class and having the conversations with you and having conversations with my mentors and the kind of like the small inner circle that I've created at Anderson, like they're like, hey, this is what we're here for, And so there's that reminder too. I can't remember where I was going with that, but yeah, I mean, like, look, it's like, this is not an easy journey, but it's worth it. I truly have learned more, not only in the last 6 months, but like in the FEMBA program, like not only like about business, like I've gotten a lot more confident in that. Love cases. And the best compliment I've ever gotten was from whoa, it's getting real dark.
We're running out of electricity.
Yeah. Was one of my interns who wanted to just try out, like, what is it like to run a CPG company? He's actually a full-timer right now. Compared me to Terrence Swan, which we all know, that famous case of leadership foundation. So that was like the best compliment I've ever gotten. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be difficult, but if you put the work in and if you build that community, you're going to feel not only like you have this safe space to kind of develop who you really want to be, but also like you're going to go through that messy process of developing who you are going to be and what your career is going to look like and what type of leader you are. And I think like some of the other programs that I've taken advantage of, like ELDP and leadership at Anderson, Entrepreneur Association, like all of those things have helped me tremendously as well.
Well, and you've been working with Jackie, right? One of the career directors, and she's been asking you, like, what kind of leader do you want to be? And you're reflecting on that.
Yeah. So leadership at Anderson is the executive coaching program, basically. And the whole point is, you know, what type of leader do you want to be? Like, who do you want to be as a leader? I'm going to try and turn on this light because I think it is pretty dark. Hang on.
Okay. It's okay. Perfect. This is live theater, everyone.
Live. Okay, there we go. Yay.
Oh, very good. Yay. All right.
So,
what kind of leader do you want to be? Yeah.
Right. So basically coming in, and it was like, okay, define your values. Like, what do you value the most? And again, this goes back to like my life theme of like, I need my village. Like, I can't do this by myself. And like, I don't even know who I am without my village. And so Jackie was so paramount this past year and a half with the Leadership at Anderson program, because we meet once a month and we have like a lot to work on every time. And this is another thing, like I've heard other folks like in the Leadership at Anderson program are like, well, I go in and I'm like, it's silence. And I'm like, well, do you tell them problems that you're having? And they're like, well, no, aren't they supposed to tell me what I'm supposed to do? I'm like, no. This is an example of you coming in being like, hey, I noticed this behavior in my professional life. It's not good. And I think it's what am I doing here? Help me shine some light on this. So you have access to these incredible executive professionals that you wouldn't otherwise have access to like this.
And do you have you begun to define your leadership style, or is that still evolving?
I think it's going to be ever evolving. But of course, like, I mean, my desk has wooden all over the place, and I actually carry his playbook around. And a lot of people have gotten the playbook from me because I just hand it out because it's like this big. So I think there's a lot of tenets of his leadership that I have based my leadership off of, which really is like what it comes down to is like success is not about winning the game, but it's about you living the fullest to your ability and showing up as a leader, not only for yourself, but for everyone around you and your team. And it doesn't work unless everyone does that. And so like, I think that's at the core of kind of where I've come. And I think it just works well with how my life has been and how like, I've never done anything truly on my own. Yes. Like, I'm a solo entrepreneur or whatever, but like, no, there's a lot of people around me that help me every single day. And so I think like, as far as my leadership style goes, it's very much like, it's very much influenced by what the people around me need, I guess, And so it's like, if I'm leading in my learning team, that might look different than what I'm leaning in with my interns or I have like a life group that I help lead. And that's, it looks different. So I think it's just like meeting your teams where they are, and that's, I guess, kind of how I've been doing it.
And you mentioned it, but people will be curious. So you said a big question was choosing your capstone. What capstone did you choose, and how is that going?
So surprisingly, I chose Gap, and here's why. I came into Anderson being with the mindset of this is an opportunity to almost like take this, like, it's not a career break, but it kind of is, because it's like this career disruption where good things are happening. And so if you're going to see this as a disruption, you have to act like it's a disruption and just like surrender to it and kind of go with it. And so it was like the obvious thing for me was to do BCO, but it was kind of awkward because it was like DrinkLyte was too far along. So I'd have to do a new idea or maybe join a new company. But I was like, look, I've done all this stuff for so many years. I want to learn what it's like to consult for a bigger company, a company that's international. And so Gap was always on my radar. I did take like EVI and BPD, which are the two prerequisites for BCO, just in case I changed my mind. But
and Gap, just for our jargon, entrepreneur venture initiate, what is it?
Entrepreneurial Venture
Initiation, I think.
Initiation, is it? Yeah, I don't know. There's so many acronyms.
And then BPD is business plan development. So,
yes, yeah.
So just for people listening, just, you get it. There are a couple different capstones. The majority of people take the Global Access Program, but a healthy subset of people take Business Creation Option, which stereotypically would be more in Tori's world. But like she said, she's too far along, have to start something new. Okay, so just back. And you did actually take the preparatory classes that are part of the BCO pathway, even though you're going to actually have the Global Access Program as your capstone.
Yeah. And I think like one thing that everybody kind of learns, I mean, at least our class is learning, is like, you may not know, like you may go through BPD and then decide you want to do GAP. Like it's really not until that spring of your second year where you're actually like making those decisions. Obviously it's good to think about it, and especially thinking about your team. But I mean, by this point in time, halfway through the FEMBA program, you're going to have already worked with like at least 3-4 different, team groups. So you'll kind of have a good idea of what your classmates look like and who you might want to work with. And
KP Keen posted a question. How do you plan to balance DrinkLyte and GAP? Like what's that going to be like?
Just it's going to look like the last year. How do I balance DrinkLyte and, clients and, the core? Like core was hard for me because I didn't have a background in finance or accounting. These are all things I kind of learned like out on the street, so to say. And so I was like, oh, well, I realized I break that rule, but you're not really supposed to. And, all these things that I needed. So yeah, how to balance. I mean, you just do it.
Yeah.
You figure out ways and people to help you do it. And you figure out ways to delegate. I think that's going back to just like surrounding yourself with people who are going to support you and who are kind of like on that path with you.
And one of your brothers asked you recently, is your MBA worth it so far?
Yeah.
What did you say?
I told him that like I would have, like this year and a half has pushed me what would have been like a decade probably ahead of in my career. Not only like knowledge wise, because of course that's very important and you need to know and grow those business skills. But I think just mentally, like as a leader, and like having met all of the people that I've met in this program, both like the faculty, staff, professors, classmates, alum, everybody, like you don't meet those people in your everyday life. Like if I were to try and meet all those people, like it would take 10 years of networking, 10 years of doing, you know what I mean? That's what I mean by that is like, this is a concentrated community to help you like, like accelerate whatever you want to be in your career so that you don't have to kind of fumble around on your own. And so like, that's where like Anderson acts as like such a good, like, kind of like pivot moment for your career. And I personally, like, I think the FEMBA program is great and for many reasons, but I think the top reason is because there is so much to experience at Anderson. There's so many teams you want to be a part of and like, test out working with people and take different classes. So you have that 3 years to do that. You don't have to fit it, in 2, which the full-time program does, which I'm sure is like just as fun and amazing. But if you want to truly like, experience everything, you have more time.
Wow. Okay. Well, all right. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I don't know if I should do this or not. So this is usually what I do with my alumni interviews. And I know I'm going to get to interview you hopefully in the future when you're an alum, but so this is, I don't know if this question fits, but I'm going to do it anyway. So this is the Bruin Bear hug. So, it takes a village to raise a FEMBA, right? No one does this program alone. And the idea with this is if you could give 3 bear hugs, one to a FEMBA friend, one to a FEMBA faculty, and then one to a family. And you can do more than 3, or you can combine. I know everybody goes, that's too hard, only do 1. But, just at this moment, I didn't tell you the question was coming. So
Yeah.
If you could acknowledge three people though, and you've done such a good job with Mr. Austin and Miles and Deb, you know, Jackie, you're a person who, you know, you've hired 8 interns. Like there are 8 UCLA undergrads whose education is bettered because they got into startup UCLA and then they got to work with you. So you're a very much in the flow person anyway.
Yeah.
But if you could throw a few bear hugs out into the universe, who would you like to spotlight?
Okay, so I think that faculty, it's really hard, but I do have to say that Trish Halamandaris is like, I like will do anything for me. In a good way. I know she has boundaries, but I definitely push those boundaries. Trish has gone above and beyond and does go above and beyond, and I'm sure a lot of other entrepreneurs who've gone through the accelerator can say this. Like she's a powerhouse in and of herself, and she's an Anderson alum, and she will fight for you. And so probably have to give one to her. Okay, as far as family goes, I guess I consider my business partner family. And so I would say he probably deserves a hug because our consulting business has definitely been held up a lot by him during this time, which has been awesome. And then friend, I think, gosh, like this is so many, but I think for this, I would say like a big group hug, and I know that's cheating, but a big group hug of everybody who's like come into DrinkLyte as either like an intern, even if it was just for like a couple of weeks, to be like, hey, how can I help and how can I learn some of these things? Like, you know, looking back at it, like we got a lot out of a lot of the folks who are, you know, are interning with us. But I think that we also gave a lot back as far as mentorship and experience. And so even like, you know, the Anderson folks who have come in, like it's been so much fun to learn from them. And I think it helps you get to know your business better when people who are checking out entrepreneurship or doing this for the first time, or they're still in undergrad and figuring out like what even is their major, like they teach you things that you didn't know. And so, yes, it takes time and effort, but like they have been incredible.
Oh, I told you earlier, I sat between 2 incredible powerhouse leaders at Anderson last night at the John Wooden Global Leadership Awards dinner. So I was, Trish Halamandaris was on my left and Lucy Allard was on my right. So the director of the Anderson Accelerator and the director of our global immersion, the Center for Global Management, 2 of the women who really make this school special. So I'm verklempt a little bit because Trish she is a powerful person and she does fight for people, and she's all about people doing something really bold and brave, which is bring something into existence that doesn't exist.
Right.
In the rules, and there's things you got to do to make a company legit. And, and we want people to win. And so many of our BCO teams launch and so many of our accelerator showcase companies win. And, so anyway, I love your acknowledgement of her and your business partner. That's, for husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, significant others, colleagues at work, FEMBA does take 15 to 25 hours out of our life.
Yeah.
So the people who we knew before FEMBA, they feel it even while we're doing it. So I appreciate that. And then so many people who've walked through the doors of your DrinkLyte journey. That's just great.
Yeah.
That's just great. Well, last thoughts or your thoughts, anything I should have asked you, I forgot, any kind of parting wisdom, anything at all as we come to here.
Let's see, resources. Oh, I guess okay, I'm going to give out so many hugs, but another hug would be just the Wolfen family. And that's a different category. I think that goes with the fellowships. And so the Wolfen fellowship was what totally changed what we got done last year. So I want to say that. And then also, but they went to the trouble to say more words about that, please, expound on that a little bit. Yeah.
What is that to you?
Well, for those of you who don't know, Larry Wolfen is an alum. He had a big, strong entrepreneurial spirit while he was at Anderson. Unfortunately, he passed away young a couple years after he graduated. So his friends and family have created this endowment to basically provide students between their first and second years, or with FEMBAs, like potentially in between their second and third years, the opportunity to try out an entrepreneurial idea, work on it full time. So instead of taking an internship, literally working on that idea that you have full time, and they give you a $15,000 grant. And you basically commit to like doing whatever that thing is. And so for us, like, there was some really specific things that we needed that money to like test for. And also, like, it did allow me to let go of my clients and work on DrinkLyte full time, which was really, I mean, that made all the difference. And that's what they want, is they want you to be able to spend that time and dedicate that time. And sometimes people come out of the program realizing they don't want to be an entrepreneur. And that's what I really love about the Wolfen family, is like, it's really not about even, you know, building a future billion-dollar unicorn. It's about going out of your comfort zone and trying something that you otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to try.
Oh, that's great. I love it. We have a boundless supply of bear hugs.
Yeah, I have too many. I can't. I guess ELDP resources. I mean, ELDP is a great program too. If you get a chance to apply. It's worth it. It's almost hard to like describe why it's so amazing, but it is. It's one of those programs that if you get into it and if you stick into it, it might be one of the best that you do at Anderson. So,
wow,
definitely, I encourage anyone to do that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know like who the audience is that's watching this, but FEMBA has been amazing for me. So if you're considering it, happy to talk to you. I'm an open door. You know, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm usually pretty good at answering you, unless you're pitching me a sales pitch, which happens all too often. But yeah, no, that's it. And Dylan, I know you work really, really hard, making sure that FEMBAs do have a voice, you know, because we are the busy students. Not that other students in other programs aren't busy, but like, we've got a lot going on, and you specifically make sure that we do have a voice and this program is amplified and you're cheering us on. So I do appreciate that as well. Bear hug to you.
I'll take it. I appreciate it. And thank you for the kind words. Well, yes. So, you know, thank you. We have some people who were able to listen live today, but mostly this will live on our website, and, you know, will be a resource for new admits, for future students. And, you know, I really think that entrepreneurship, it's a special path, and, you know, you've found it and chosen it, and, you know, you're getting the reps in, the repetitions to master the craft, right? It's a world unto itself. And I love that you've accelerated your journey by a decade over 18 months. And I just can't wait to see, because I'm anticipating a hockey stick graph for you. You know, that's so often what happens.
No pressure.
No pressure. Well, you know, but
just kidding.
Like, most overnight successes take 15 years. That dynamic.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And I sometimes think FEMBA's like giving yourself a stair-step promotion in the employed model, but it's also like giving yourself a breakthrough product in the startup model, because it does accelerate. It puts you into one of those state changes where, oh snap, you know, there's a lot coming at me now, and I have to adjust. I have to accelerate. I have to open up. I have to delegate. You know, I have to get way out of my comfort zone. And we all grow out there on the skinny branches. That's where we grow. We don't grow in the middle holding onto the tree trunk. There's no growth there. It's comfortable. It's very stable, but that's not where we grow. And so your story, in my aspiration of your story, you know, I'd love more people to hear your story, you know, because it's the medical, how do you train medical doctors? See one, do one, teach one, right?
Okay.
So I want people to see what an entrepreneur looks like before they go do it themselves, before they become their own mentors and teach others. And I just think you have been living that, you know. Oh my God, Mr. Austin, that gave me chills. Like, how
Yeah, I'll
amazing.
have to send this to him.
Go, Mr. Austin.
I don't know if he's heard from me in a long time, but yeah.
Orangeville. Look what you created.
Yeah.
Berkeley and UCLA. That's big stuff. It's big stuff.
Yeah. Someone asked me, I think I was on a trip and they're like, oh, you go to SC? And I was like, no, I'm a UC.
Yay, University of California.
Yeah, bleed that blue and gold. Yeah, so this is great. I'm excited to share it, definitely.
Well, thanks everyone for being here today. We're gonna let Tori keep the lights on and return to the Evolve conference, which goes until 6. And you know, just really great to have this conversation with everyone today. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Dylan.
Thanks, Tori.
Bye.